Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of Talking Cardboard. My name is Cory.
I'm Ryan.
And in today's video, we are talking about our favorite spooky board games of all time for this Halloween season. A little bit later here in the video, I will be joined by my daughter Josie because she had some input on one of her favorite spooky games of all time. For those of you who have kids out there and want to know what, maybe a nice kid spooky game would be for that as well. But who am I kidding? This video would probably be a lot more interesting if you were a skeleton.
What?
All right, and like we said, we are talking about our favorite spooky games of all time, and we're going to start off with a couple honorable mentions. I've got a couple, Ryan has a couple of his honorable mentions, and then get right into the list of the top games. So I guess we'll start with Ryan with what are your honorable mentions?
Yeah, my honorable mentions are Zombicide, just the series in general. I feel like has to be on that list. Just haven't played a ton of it enough to have it kind of in my favorite ones. Yeah. And my other one is Arkham Horror, the card game. And for the same reason, it might be on my main list if I have played it more. I just haven't played it a ton, but it's a very fun game.
Yeah, and my first honorable mention, any of these honorable mentions could make the list in any other given year, but I wanted to throw Clank Catacombs on the list. It is the spookiest of all the versions of Clank. It is the newest version of Clank as well. Clank, classic deck building mixed with kind of exploring on a board, and a lot of fun. What's different about Clank Catacombs is that it's a variable board with different tiles, so I think that adds kind of a nice twist to it, and the catacombs feel of it all just adds kind of that spooky element. So I would definitely recommend Clank Catacombs. And my other honorable mention on the list is Harrow County, which is another newer game to the list, and a game that I've played a few times, but the reason why it didn't make my top games on the list is because it's just more of a two-player game only. You can play up to 3 or 4 players, but at its heart, it's just a true abstract game, which both sides are playing an asymmetric faction. It's a very, very spooky theme. It's based off of a graphic novel series where you're summoning haints and trying to take down the opposing player with those and trying to basically do either take over the town or, fend off the different haints that they're spawning. So it's definitely a very, very spooky theme, but very abstract. So one that I don't get to the table a lot because it is pretty much just a 2-player abstract game, but wanted to mention that. All right, and now over to Josie's pick with her favorite spooky game. It's called Ticket to Ride Ghost Train. And what is this game all about?
It's about a train.
Yeah, and in the game, what are you trying to do? You're trying to get different train cards to place trains on the map. Do you like the trains? And then what else do you like about the game?
The pumpkins on the cards.
The pumpkins on the cards and the different locations on the map are like graveyards and like haunted houses and different things. So it is like a kid's version of Ticket to Ride. Mm-hmm. And it's a very simplified version where you're trying to connect two towns with a route to get points. I think it definitely fits the spooky theme very well. Anything else you wanted to mention about that?
I do like the haunted school.
Ooh, the haunted school is another good location. So it's definitely a kid's version of Ticket to Ride, the classic Ticket to Ride series of games, but definitely one that we like to pull out closer to Halloween season because it fits that theme so well. All right, so now let's move into our main list of spooky games. And yeah, starting with Ryan, what is the first spooky game that actually made your list?
For me, kind of my third favorite spooky game would be Betrayal at the House on the Hill. There's several versions now, and I think each time that they make a new version, it gets a little better and it kind of polishes the game a little more and makes some of the kind of quirky rules in the first versions, fixes those a little bit. But still, you can run into some problems once you get to the haunt, and it gets kind of weird, and the rules get a little wonky depending on the layout of the house, and so that can make it a little bit less fun. But the gameplay up until the haunt, and then when you get that final omen card and that triggers the haunt, that is a moment in a board game that's it's very memorable. It's very fun.
Yeah.
And everything after that still can be really fun. Some of them are just kind of bring the game down a little bit after that climax, but still really fun game. Great horror themed board game.
Yeah, and kind of going off of that too, it's evolved into the Betrayal Legacy game, which some of us have gotten played, and I would say that's probably the best version of Betrayal at House on the Hill.
I agree.
Polished it probably the best. So, but yeah, if you're looking for a great legacy game, Betrayal at House on the Hill Legacy is great as well. My first game on the list for spooky themed games is Horrified. I feel like I couldn't make a spooky game list without mentioning Horrified.
Yeah.
It's on the shelves at Target all over the place. They have, 4 different versions of it now. I just keep coming back to the classic Horrified, just the classic Universal monsters. I really like that theme, but the mechanisms have kind of stayed the same. But if you're looking for more unique ways to try, or more unique monsters to combat and try to beat the game in different ways, I think each version brings variable win conditions and a little bit more fresh and newness to each version of the game. But yeah, really any of the versions of Horrified can't go wrong. Each one of them have their own little element of spookiness to them. But like I said, that original Horrified with the Universal monsters, Frankenstein, Frankenstein's Bride, Dracula, Wolfman, all those are just classic Halloween monsters.
Yeah.
So that's my first pick on the list here. What's your number 2?
Yeah, my number 2 would be Dead of Winter. Again, like great experiences within the game. Kind of each player, you start by controlling 1 or 2 different characters in the game, and then throughout kind of where you go on this map, can take control of more players, but then like kind of your little compound, you have to search various rooms of the compound to get different items that you can use to fight off the zombies. You have to get like food and supplies to feed like all of your players, and then there's sort of becomes sort of like NPCs that you have to like give supplies to and give food so that they don't die. And then at some point there's crossroad cards that kind of make a player choose like something that is maybe really good for them or something that's like just kind of good for everybody. And then at some point there can be some trader elements to the game too, which not everybody likes that aspect of it. But yeah, it's a really fun game, really playable, just because the list of Crossroads cards is so big that you're always playing a little bit of a different game. But yeah.
Yeah, and I believe this was the first game with the Crossroads system that was first introduced with that, and that deck of Crossroads cards, like you said, is just so variable. It's really cool, and I think on the bottom of each of the Crossroads cards, it'll trigger in different ways if different players do different things.
Yep.
So some of them might never trigger, some of them, might trigger at different moments, and that just makes for fresh and variable gameplay every time because you don't know what's going to happen when. You're going around the map trying not to get bitten by the zombies and stuff, so it's very tense when you're trying to travel locations.
Yes.
But like you said, it's kind of semi-cooperative in a sense. I actually really do enjoy that about that game.
Yeah, like the way it works is like in order for you to win as your character, everybody has to win first.
Yep.
So there's like main objective that has to be finished, and then for you to also kind of win, you have to complete your secondary objective.
Yeah, definitely a good pick. One that we haven't played I haven't played it at least for a few years now.
Yeah.
But definitely a good pick. Rolling into my next pick is another really, really old game if we're talking about the first edition, but I'm specifically talking about the second edition here, and that is Mansions of Madness. Mansions of Madness, I no longer own this game because most of the scenarios last 3-4 plus hours, and I just can't really find time to get it to the table. But if they had more expansions that had shorter scenarios, I would rebuy this game and play it again. But every expansion they come out with is another 2 to 3, 4 hour scenario. Wow. So it's like, throw in some 60 to 90 minute scenarios, and I think this would really revamp the game. But that set aside, it is a very spooky game. It is app-driven. It's one of the best app-driven games I've ever played. It's got spooky music playing the whole time as you're going through the mansion, trying to discover different things. And as you're unfolding or turning over, different objects or going into different rooms, you never know what you're going to find. Yeah. But the whole thing is just around trying to cooperatively beat the app and find different clues and different things to try to get to your end goal mission. And some of the missions, you don't necessarily know exactly what you're doing, but those clues start to unfold and be like, oh, okay, this is what we're actually trying to do. Every game of it we've played is very tense. And like I said, the cooperative element of it is really cool because you are all going against the app. You don't have to have one player kind of sit out and essentially be the dungeon master for the game.
Yep.
So that is
Which I think you did have to do with the first edition, right?
You did.
Yeah. I've only played first edition, and that was not that fun.
Yeah, one person had to run the game in the first edition, and if they made one little mistake, it could ruin the entire game itself. It could unbalance the game. So second edition is the way to go for that. But
cool.
What's your next pick?
Yeah, my favorite one, and this is on my list for favorite games of all time as well, usually is Alien Legendary Encounter. It fits perfectly within Alien movie franchise. You can play as all the characters. You can play through sequentially like every movie in order. Great cooperative game, great solo game. There is some trader component to it as well in one version where you can like get a chest buster and then become an alien and then play as the alien.
Yep.
I don't think that's come up in games I've played, but that'd be fun to try. But it's a great game. It gets really tense as you know that these bigger and bigger aliens are coming, and you know that boss is going to drop, and it's just like you got to play your cards in the right order, and it's really fun.
Yeah, and that's one of the games that I haven't again played for years, and I think it's a little bit more difficult to get out of the box because of the setup or the different. You have to know which cards to use in different scenarios.
Yeah,
so you have to kind of organize it.
There's a bit of organizing to start with, but
if you can get through that, I hear it's great.
The game goes quick after that.
Yeah. And my number one pick for definitely the most, it is spooky, but it's grotesque, it's violent, it's bloody, it's gory, it's very, just grotesque, I think is the best word for it, and that's Abomination. Have you played Abomination with the group?
Yep.
Okay. So Abomination, I do appreciate, I will say it is a game that is on the longer side, but I do appreciate that the designer came out with an official variant that shortened the game. You probably played with that last time, and I wasn't there for that, so I would really like to try it again with the shortened variant that cuts the game kind of in half. So it's more of like a 2-hour game rather than a 4-hour game. And really, if you're playing that shortened version, I think the 2 hour is the sweet spot for this one. But essentially the theme is you're going around town, it's worker placement. You're trying to dig up dead bodies or go to the morgue, try to collect different body parts to create your own Frankenstein monster. It takes after the Mary Shelley's Frankenstein original book, and it does it in a very, very cool way. Like I said, just like collecting the body parts and getting either fresh parts or not so fresh parts. And it's got an element where you're actually putting the parts on ice to keep the parts fresh so they don't rot on you. And just kind of that balance of it's not really pick up and deliver, but just trying to get those components to then put into your Frankenstein monster and then trying to shock your monster to life to try to get the most points. Everything to do with the game is so thematic and so like perfectly disturbing that it's just a lot of fun to pull out around every Halloween season.
Yeah, and it is, I mean, it's not like graphic in a sense that you like 17 plus or anything, but I mean, the game doesn't hold back on gore or realistic ideas of
it does have a worker placement spot though.
Body parts,
worker placement spot in the back alley where essentially it's hinting at the fact that it's either a fresh dead body or you're the one doing the murder, or a murder had just happened and you're picking off body parts from a murder. So it's definitely got some 17 plus elements to it, but it doesn't really, I mean, other than the body laying on the table with like the muscles and all that, it's kind of gross. But other than that, it's just kind of your imagination.
It's really good.
Yeah. So that pretty much rounds out our list here for today's spooky games. I think any one of these games could be pulled out for your Halloween party or your Halloween gaming and really fit the theme very, very well. So that pretty much does it for today's list. Until next time, you all have fun gaming.
Bye.